Hi, John here from VoWac Publishing again. We were talking about growing up learning and some of the learning modalities. We're going to talk about the auditory learner this time. Interesting character, the auditory learner. If you don't know what's on auditory, if you don't know what's on an auditory learner's mind, you haven't been listening, because they're always talking, singing, humming. Certainly they get into music. It's one of those kids that has to hear something and actually say it themselves in order to get the concept processed into memory. So when they read, typically they'll read out loud. It's the kid that when you give directions, read the directions to yourself. And they'll go, underline 1, 2, and they'll talk to themselves. That's just how they function. It's the only way that they know how to do it. They don't even know they're doing it. The auditory learner doesn't use a lot of eye contact. They're looking down here, they're looking over here, they're kind of looking around. They're paying attention. They're listening, but they're really not looking at you. The auditory learner, that's the kid who you can put them in a corner, they're playing with something, with Lincoln Logs or dolls or whatever, and you can be in another part of the room talking to your friends about this, that, and another thing, and thinking they're not listening. And that's the kid that will go home and repeat everything verbatim. So they are paying attention. When they meet people, they want them to talk so they can hear them. That's how they get to know them, by listening to them. When they get angry, they get louder. They want you to know that they're angry. We were talking about the visual learner has to put their glasses on in order to see who they're talking to when they answer the phone. The auditory learner will have to take their glasses off when they answer the phone so they can hear who they're talking to. They can't use any of the visual distraction. The auditory learner, for show and tell, will have a story to tell. They will tell you a story. Matter of fact, it doesn't even have to be show and tell, and they will tell you a story. You can be in the middle of math class, science class, social studies, whatever. Teacher, I gotta tell you something. They got a story. They always have a story. That's the kid who will always come up to you and tell you something in the morning. Something happened at home, something happened on the way to school, something happened on the bus, something always happened. The same kind of process that the visual learner uses, so they have to look at the pictures. The auditory learner, when they put a project together, like that bookcase we talked about from the visual learner, the auditory learner will put all the pieces out and he'll say, here, read me the directions. Read these to me so that I can hear what I need to do. This kid, in order to help them, they need to say things, again, to get this concept processed. So like when you're doing Around the World with Math Facts, that game where the fastest kid goes to the next kid and you go around and they collect cards or flashcards or whatever. This is the kid who will have to say it. The visual learner, 2 times 2 is 4. They got it just like that. The auditory learner, very quickly in his head goes 2 times 2 is 4. There's just a little bit of a delay, but the visual learner is going to be a little bit faster. The auditory learner knows the stuff, but he's just not quite as fast. The older auditory learner, they would do well, like if they're sitting in a lecture, if they have a tape recorder so they can listen to what was said over and over again. Or if there were a reading assignment, have someone read the content to them. They would understand it and comprehend it better if they could hear it rather than having to read it themselves. They need an environment free from distracting noises, but they prefer to have some kind of white noise. So if you're a strong auditory learner, chances are when you go home you have the TV on. When you're in the car you have the radio on or the stereo or whatever. That kind of background noise is fine. I call that white noise. But auditory learners, when you put them side by side, they spin off from one another. They can't concentrate when they're working side by side because they're talking to themselves. So the auditory learner, the first one, will say, I can't concentrate because he's talking to himself. And then this one will go, oh, no, I can't concentrate because he's talking to himself. So separate them in the room. Don't put them side by side because they will spin off from one another. If you're going to reward this child, verbally, if you're going to reward them verbally, you need to point out exactly what was right, what it is that you're looking for an acceptable behavior. Be real specific. Explain why it was right. And they need that information. What you say is not nearly as important as how you say it, so you have to be very sincere in your voice tone. For some reason, don't postpone with these kids. If you promise to come through with something at 2 o'clock and it's a reward, then by God, you better come through at 2 o'clock. That's what these kids expect. If you have to discipline the auditory learner, you need, again, to be real detailed on what specifically is wrong. What is the problem? And if you're trying to get a fix to the problem, they need to be part of the fix. You can't just go to the auditory learner and say, when you do this, this disrupts the class or whatever. So you need to stop. And the kid goes, okay, I understand. And you turn around and he's doing the same thing again. Because he's not part of the fix. So the approach should be, when you are doing this, it's very disruptive. What can you do differently so that it is not disrupting your classmates or keeping me from teaching? Solicit some kind of an answer, because they're the ones that are coming up with the solution. And if it's a solution that you can live with, then say, okay, this is, and then repeat the solution. This is what you told me. This is what you said you were going to do instead. That is the beginning of a good fix, because then he's part of the game. Then he's part of the fix. He's part of the solution, and then you can come up with the positive results after that. Don't debate with these kids. They will talk you in a circle. They will listen to what you say. They have a knack for working the words around the conversation. They will try and get you to believe that what you said was wrong. Even though you know you're right, they will work it. Some of our best trial attorneys are auditory learners. That's that listening skill. So those are just a few things about the auditory learner. They certainly add some different kind of spice, and you can find out more about them in here. That's the auditory learner. Again, if you haven't been listening, you don't know what's on their minds. So pay attention to them. They're talking. Thank you. See you next time. We'll talk about the kinesthetic learner.